It hurts when I pull back the curtains and look out the window, but I want to see my family and remind myself of the consequences of bad choices. My ex-husband lives across the street. His house has a swimming pool. I can't stop our guys from going out there and having fun. We do not have an official visiting schedule. My ex-husband and I often talk about what's on the boys' schedule every day and decide who takes them where and when, as well as who feeds them and when. That's all we talk about. I see boys have started inviting girls. Their testosterone must be at its peak. They show off their fun dives and big splashes. It looks like it's working. The girls giggle. Girls? They are only 13 or 14 years old, but their bodies look older. I hope Rob talked to the guys. Someone might need to talk to him. This fitness instructor, since she's over 40 and an old lady for the boys, looks amazing in her bikini. I think of the old analogy of dental floss being bigger than what's on it. Am I exaggerating? Maybe. Am I really jealous? Yes, damn it, I'm jealous. Technically, our children live with me since I have primary custody, but I don't have a pool. They usually sleep and eat here. Most of their clothes are here. The boys are used to living in the house opposite. We were family friends with the family that used to live there. They had a boy and a girl, about the same age as our boys. The children practically lived in both houses. Misty and Carl James were close to becoming surrogate parents for our children. Many believe that Misty and Carl had 4 children. Looks like we've had a good life? Yes. So what went wrong? The answer is, I became a cheater. This is definitely not a statement of pride. It's just a fact. So I wasn't a cheater for very long, but long enough to ruin my life and hurt my family. It took many therapy sessions to understand what I did and, more importantly, why I did it. Maybe this will help someone prevent them from suffering what happened to me and my family. My name is Susan Lawrence. I was married to Rob Lawrence. We have 2 boys, David and Eli, who are now 13 and 14 years old, respectively. I worked in a publishing house as an assistant editor. Rob ran his own security business for homes and offices. We were married for almost 20 years, although for the first 4 years, we only dated between business trips. He was a military deputy. We met on a blind date. I was attractive enough to date myself, but Amy needed someone for her boyfriend's friend. My friend Amy was dating an MP who was trying to convince his mate Rob to join. Although Amy and her boyfriend never got married, my friendship with Rob blossomed. Knowing that he was leaving for a long time, it was necessary to urgently decide on our relationship. We wanted to make a big decision one way or another before he left. We got married. Rob and I agreed on almost everything: politics, religion, children, and fidelity. The glow of marriage kept me from temptation while I was waiting, although I had several active suitors. Rob left again after his first 2-year stint due to a re-recruitment bonus. This greatly affected our ability to run a household. It was hard on our relationship, but we got through it. Shortly after Rob returned, we decided to have children. I worked for 4 years, and after being fired, he got a job at a security company. My firm was willing to let me work out of our home during the latter part of my pregnancy and the first few months afterward. Soon, we had 2 babies, a year apart. Life was good, not easy, but good. When the boys went to school, I started working more in the office. When the security company Rob worked for decided to sell its share to one of the nation's largest firms, Rob had the idea that he could run his own security business. His father gave him startup money. I was scared because of the financial risk, but I believed in my husband. His departure from work was amicable, and several of the guys told Rob to call them when his business got big enough to need more employees. We squeezed and sacrificed for about 5 years before the business really started to take off. Ironically, the impetus for the rise was increased interest in equipment that allowed people to spy on their allegedly cheating spouses. I continued to work. I liked it. I received good annual raises. The editorial business was strong because everyone seemed to have a book they had to write. I loved to read, and it was important to me that my opinion was valued. I managed to improve many books, although I rejected many. Now I have to come to the conclusion that this is when I began to develop an increased appreciation for who I was in relation to my husband. Neither Rob nor I expressed any serious complaints about our lives. Our friendship, shared housework, finances, parenting, and sex life were quite satisfactory. Since everything was going so well, we settled into a routine. I didn't understand how dangerous it could be. My problem with Rob came about very gradually. By the time we began to take each other for granted, my attitude became increasingly negative. Why am I the only one doing the dishes? How is it that he or the boys can choose where to eat? Why doesn't he ever say sweet things like he did when he was courting me? Why am I only recognized on my birthday, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, and Christmas? Why do we always have sex the same way? These were some of the many ways I began to denigrate my marriage, but I asked my questions only to myself. I never brought this up with Rob. I thought that if he really loved me as much as I loved him, he would understand what was wrong. Why was it only up to me to solve our problems? My indignation grew. I became depressed, but continued to fulfill my role in the house. I had a routine that I began to perceive as a rut in which I was stuck. No one seemed to notice the change in me. For my own sake, I turned more and more to work. When I was happy with my home life, I didn't think much of the personal compliments I received at the office. Now, I sought them out and treasured them. I started dressing more provocatively. I called it more stylish when my husband noticed the change in my wardrobe. The comments, stares, and flirting in the office increased, and I loved it. They paid more attention to me. Then, I made a decision that turned my life upside down. Hal, my boss, and I were working on getting the book ready for publication. The deadline was almost impossible. We realized that we would have to work late on Thursday to be able to submit the final manuscript on Friday. One of the reasons I didn't mind working late was because Hal was one of my biggest fans and flirting partners. This did not stop him from being a handsome man, even though he was married. But damn, me too. When we finished, Hal exclaimed, "I'm afraid I've ruined your plans for a home-cooked dinner." Don't worry. On Thursday nights, Rob orders food, which is pizza. He and the boys watch college football on Thursday night. They don't even notice whether I'm there or not. If you were my wife, I would never let you out of my sight. Forgive my double negative. I felt a jolt in my heart. I was flattered. I was excited. I stumbled and said, "Thank you. Sometimes I feel like my family doesn't value me." Why did I tell him this? "Please let me take you to dinner to make up for missing yours." I agreed, and we went somewhere near the office. It was a fish place, and we drank a bottle and a half of wine before we decided it was time for us to leave. Lunch was pleasant. We told each other about our home life and laughed about things that only teenagers think about. We both expressed some lack of spark in our relationships with our spouses. I think we both understood what a dangerous path we had chosen, but we continued to follow it. Hal dropped me off at my car. It felt like a first date, so I kissed him as a thank you. The kiss lasted far beyond a thank you kiss, and not very far from a bedroom kiss. When we parted, we looked at each other with a look of, what did we just do? I'm sure we both knew that this wasn't the only time we kissed. On the way home, I couldn't get Hal, the kiss, and all the possibilities out of my head. It was so different and much more exciting than what happened day after day at home. It's been almost 20 years since I kissed another man. I felt scared. Will Rob notice how much I enjoy my time with Hal? Can I legitimately say that nothing actually happened? This would be true from a physical point of view, since we each had a few friends where kissing was part of hello and goodbye. I entered the house and heard a ball game being played in the office where there was a large TV. "I'm home!" I shouted. I don't know what they shouted back other than asking if I wanted pizza. "No, thank you. I had a snack at a fast food cafe." Why did I lie about this? Looking back, I think this was the beginning of a psychological withdrawal that allowed me to view lying to my husband as more acceptable. I left the boys, including my husband, to play ball and went to bed. It was difficult to sleep, but the excitement of Hal's kiss had subsided. I was almost asleep when Rob literally flew into my bed. "Hey, baby, the Wildcats won. What are my chances of scoring with you tonight?" My God! How old are you? I am working tomorrow. Now leave me alone. Rob said nothing, but left the bed in the bedroom. I was still angry at him for a few minutes, and then I felt guilty for being too rude. Guilt couldn't make me get up and go apologize. I made myself comfortable on the pillow, hoping to see Hal in my dreams. I had to understand that once you start down the path of deception, you inevitably change your behavior with loved ones who trust you. When I woke up a little late the next morning, I saw no sign that Rob had slept in our bed. I entered the guest room and saw that he had spent the night there. As I hurried downstairs to prepare breakfast for the boys, I saw them eating breakfast at the kitchen table. "Hello, Mom. Dad told me to let you sleep." He cooked us breakfast before leaving for work. I went for a cup of coffee. I needed to sleep after working late yesterday. I realized that I was trying to justify the time spent away from home, although no one asked me about it. I felt like both the prosecutor and defense attorney were fighting in my head. Soon the boys were out the door to wait for the bus. I finished getting ready for work. I deliberately chose one of my older, more conservative outfits. I guess I was trying to make amends for how I've been soliciting extramarital attention from Hal lately. I felt like I had to hide what I had done. A less sexy dress will help. I avoided Hal until my meeting with the senior editor at 11 Wo. Hal and I presented the manuscript we finished last night. The editor had several questions. Our meeting continued into the lunch hour, so it was only natural for Hal and I to go to lunch together. I think I knew what was going to happen when Hal chose the restaurant at the Golden Tree Hotel, one of the best restaurants in town. We broke a company rule and drank wine with our meal. For the first hour, we talked mostly about business. When it was time to head back to our office, Hal said we probably shouldn't come back with wine on our breath. With my consent, he called the office and said that we would not be returning today. After the call, I asked, "So, what are we going to do with the rest of the day?" Having a conservative dress did not stop the cheater inside from coming out. Is wine to blame for everything? Why don't we continue what we started last night in one of the rooms? This was the moment of truth. I felt like I was floating outside my body as I watched the promiscuous woman in my place say, "Okay." My out-of-body self realized that I had just agreed to commit adultery, and I did it. It was exciting primarily because it was a different person. I was in seventh heaven, and he seemed pleased too, but with every step I felt more and more guilty. He noticed this, so I lied about how wonderful it was. He asked if we would continue to do this on an ongoing basis. I told him that would be amazing, but I couldn't risk getting caught. I said that we should just leave it as a one-time fantasy, and that it would never happen again. He was disappointed, but agreed. I'm sure he hoped to change my mind later. Perhaps he was right. I wasn't sure about this myself. When we got out of the elevator, I was sure that everyone was looking at me and everyone knew what we had done. I hurried to his car and with great relief made it to mine, parked at work. That's when the flood began. I cried and sobbed because of my carelessness. I betrayed my husband. I was risking my marriage. I put my family's future at risk, and all for the sake of some mediocre sex with another man. After crying, I went home. I didn't know what to do. I arrived home earlier than usual and took care of household chores. I needed something, anything, to take my mind off what I had done. I had to keep Rob in the dark. I had to save my marriage. I need to pretend nothing happened. But I was only deceiving myself. As soon as I saw Rob come in, I burst into tears. "Seuss, what's the matter? What's happened? Are the boys okay?" Between sobs, I blurted out, "I'm the one who got into trouble. Have you lost your job? Got into an accident? Now, I'm sure this is something we can figure out together. It can't be that bad." "Oh yes, maybe. Rob, I slept with another man. When I reached out to Rob for a hug, he backed away." "You... what?" "I had sex with another man. I do not love him. I love only you. Please forgive me. This will never happen again. This shouldn't have happened the first time. Or is this not the first time? This was the first, only, and last time. I promise. I promise. I remember you promised this at our wedding. Sorry, your promises don't mean anything anymore." His neck was red from hives which only appeared during times of extreme stress. I need to get out of here for a while. Do not call me. Please do not leave me. I'll just die. If I stay, you might die. Rob headed towards the door. His words sent a chill down my spine. His experience and skills can be used for murder. Physically, it would be easy for him. I fed the boys and let them cross the street and swim with their friends. I didn't even bother calling Carl and Misty. Our children had a standing invitation to both houses. I used this time to figure out how to convince Rob not to divorce me. When the boys got home and Rob still hadn't returned, I told the guys that he had been called to work security out of town and might not come back that evening. They accepted my words and went to bed. They stayed up playing video games since there was no school tomorrow. I lay awake playing games in my head like, what should I do if I become a single mother? And will Rob want to get even or take revenge? And will he try to do something to Hal? Oh, damn. I wasn't thinking about Hal's wife and kids. Of course, Rob won't harm children. It was harder for me to explain why Rob didn't come home all weekend. Fortunately, the boys played with other children almost all the time. Apparently, Rob used this time to figure out that Hal was my lover. As we worked together late on Thursday night, Rob showed up at our office on Monday and asked to see Hal. I didn't go to work on Monday due to ongoing anxiety. Hal later told me that Rob seemed calm. Rob said he wanted to apologize for his wife seducing Hal and hoped it wouldn't cause any problems that would interfere with my future work. Hal let his guard down and assured Rob that this wouldn't happen. That's all Rob needed to confirm his theory. He stood up and extended his hand to Hal. When Hal responded in kind, Rob grabbed his hand and pulled him towards him. A quick blow to the throat knocked Hal out of action. While Hal was gasping for breath, Rob walked around the table and kicked him in the balls, making it hard for Hal to breathe. Several more blows followed before Rob stopped. He told Hal that he didn't care whether he called the police or not. He'll tell Hal's wife about our affair and let her listen to the conversation he just recorded. Rob pointed out that after Hal's wife divorced him and Rob divorced me, Hal and I could fuck as much as we wanted. Rob was at Hal's house when he called his wife from the hospital. He had hoped to prepare his wife first, but Rob had already done that. She told Hal not to worry about returning home. The police picked up Rob at Hal's house and he offered no resistance. He went to jail on charges of aggravated assault. I visited Rob in jail and offered to post his bail. He refused, saying that it was time for each of us to learn to take care of ourselves. I asked him, "What about the boys?" He replied, "You should have thought about this before you decided to cheat. I had to live with it while I was growing up. It won't be easy for them, but I managed. Don't worry, they have the strength to do it." This was a part of Rob's home life that I knew nothing about before. Rob pleaded guilty. He tried to stop his public defender from using Hal and I's infidelity as a mitigating factor. He didn't mind prison. He received 18 months but served only 6. It's been a tough 6 months for me and the boys. I almost never saw them because they knew that I cheated on their father. And they always had a house across the street. I didn't file for divorce because I didn't want to get a divorce. When Rob returned from prison, we didn't talk about my cheating or the reasons why I cheated with Hal. Instead, we talked about what was best for boys. I was pleasantly surprised that he agreed to stay in the house for the boys. He will stay in his den, sleep on the sofa bed, and use the downstairs bathroom. I didn't even dare ask if we could have sex life again. I knew the answer. What actually led to our formal divorce was that Carl was transferred to another state. Their house was up for sale, and our children were devastated. This seemed to stress the boys out more than the problems Rob and I were having. At first, I didn't know how this situation affected Rob. The first sign of his decision was that he filed for divorce and served me in my office. At this time, Hal was in the midst of divorce proceedings with his wife. I didn't receive any warning from Rob. The petition mentioned adultery, although the issue was only relevant in a divorce to resolve custody issues. He just wanted to put everything in its place. I wasn't that upset. My adultery was a fact. His next move was revealed when the for sale sign was removed from Carl and Misty's house. I walked over hoping that this meant they would stay. That's when I found out they had sold the house to Rob. I understood everything. It was the perfect solution for Rob. He will see his boys as often as he and they want until I object or sell our house and move. I will still be their mother with primary custody. He was willing to help me with alimony and child support, plus support for household expenses. Allowing me to see him and the boys so often in his house was his revenge on me. Clever man. Until he gets married again, I decided to let him know that I am not dating anyone. I will continue to be flexible with boys. I won't put pressure on him. Recently, he agreed to have lunch with us sometimes. I know part of the reason is that he's a loosey cook. I pray that one of the reasons is a desire to return to the old days. Our dinners have begun to resemble old family gatherings, so I have hope. Objectively, some people would say that. I have nothing to complain about. Even though I was a cheating wife, I got the house, child support, and primary custody of the children. Several women advised him to be more lenient since it was just one mistake of mine. Some told me that I should have resisted when he asked for more time with his boys than I was legally obligated to give him. I told these advisors to go to hell. Basically, they were trying to convince me to be a bitch. I'm a cheater, not a bitch. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.